Hello, everyone. World of YouTube. What was that you just heard? Well, if you were anywhere on the internet in 2015, you probably heard it on the Mad Sounds podcast, a podcast that I was a part of with co-host Mark from Fully Involved, who is here with me today.
That wasn't the name at the time. I've rebranded plenty since, but let's regress, baby. Now's the time for it.
Mark was the one that made the podcast. It was his creation back then. In reference to the Arctic Monkeys song, which is something that I talked about in the redacted that I did for that album.
And what's funny is that if you think about it, at that time, at the time that the podcast basically unceremoniously fizzled out, they hadn't even released the follow-up album to that yet, and we hadn't been able to discourse about that. Or the album after, for that matter. I'm an avid tranquility-based defender, for the record, and I'm not a defender of the car whatsoever, because it sounds like what people who don't like tranquility-based thinks that album sounds like. Anyway, back to you.
I very much agree. I own Tranquility Base. I have zero interest in even entertaining the thought of buying the car on any platform, because it feels very disposable as a record. It feels very hollow, and it feels like the worst kind of embracing of sound one could do, because I really like the sonic palette of Tranquility Base, but they have a core through that I think is more interesting to listen to.
Yeah, I mean, and now enough of that 2018 nostalgia. Let's talk about 2017 nostalgia.
Yeah,
what brings us here today?
Brand new.
God, oh yeah, we went through a whole cycle where we did a whole episode. I think it might have been with John. I forget exactly, but we did a whole episode kind of breaking down that whole situation as it was happening. And now, oops, 7-year cycle, and now they're playing shows again, like nothing happened. I guess.
Yeah. I have no interest in actually indulging in whatever they got going on.
Nah.
But that's just me.
Nah. But anyway, so what brings us here today? Because this was my project, my thing that I edited and put on my own channel, which used to be called Spin It Reviews, then became Mad Sounds, and then it just kind of became a TikToker, I guess. But you brought this idea to the table a bit ago, and the thing is, because there was never an official end to the run of the pod, we never reflected on it exactly. Whenever someone brings it up to me on rare occasion, it's always kind of surprising. And so I don't know, what did you take? Clearly, you have some takeaways from that era that we haven't articulated yet. So what inspired this?
So I honestly owe a lot to the podcast, because when you asked me to be a part of it, it was during a time where I wasn't really talking about music on the channel. I was kind of going through some shit personally, and it was nice to have a creative outlet that I could be a part of, but not necessarily have to put my hands all the way in the pot of. I could try to work on myself and do this thing, but also you through the podcast introduced me to John and Crash, who, very much in the music community. They've got their own sort of tangents, but John and Crash, we became pretty good friends through this. And it was while I'd been in the outskirts of the music community in some really weird ways, I never really mingled. And this is a way for me to mingle, and it was a fun time. It was the second podcast out of 3 that I've ever been a part of, and it's the one that I think about the most when it comes to reflecting.
Nice. Yeah, and I have thought about that in a joke flexing kind of way about how I became this kind of matchmaker with music dorks on the internet. In that span of a couple of years right there. But it's really that is cool to hear. That is really, really cool to hear.
No, I'm and I appreciate you for wanting me to be a part of this. What brought you to ask me? Because I know John was one of the guys that was co-hosting it with you, but what made you want to bring me on? Because I wasn't Again, I wasn't doing anything at the time.
Respectfully, I have no goddamn clue.
Fair enough.
What the occasion that's marking this is that it's technically 10 years since I launched the first iteration of what would become of Mad Sounds, what would become, and the first iteration of it ran for I think 3 or 4 episodes. It was with Sean, who was at the time with a channel called Rewind Reviews, and now is kind of doing sort of his own thing, I believe. So that ran for a few episodes, and then I kind of had to retool it based on scheduling and stuff like that. And I don't remember the thought process exactly, but I think we were becoming friends at that time, and I had around that time visited John for the first time in real life, and so the three of us were becoming friends, and so it kind of just felt like a natural thing,
Fair enough.
And then John had his own things that he had to take care of. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I remember we did the one podcast you had with me and John, but that was the only one that we had together before. Or no, we had a couple together because we did that one. Well, we did did we do the Ryan Adams one with him as well?
Yeah, we did. Well, it was kind of an on and off thing with him for a good few months or so, and then eventually we kind of had to accept that, he had his own stuff to do on his own channel and all that. He was definitely busier than the two of us at that time, and so it eventually just splintered off and became the duo thing that it became with us for a couple of semesters worth of time at college between journalism classes.
Yeah, which I mean, we didn't necessarily go into a journalistic side of music discussion, but we did do dives on music, and we had segments where we talked about albums in a very niche or very dissected specific sort of way.
Yeah.
Do you think that kind of do you think that gave you a different avenue to sort of work your brain in that sort of way that was separate from the journalistic side that you were kind of spending your time with?
I think so, because there were a couple more kind of topical things that we were able to get into in hindsight that because I was very much conveyor belt album review kind of style, I didn't really have as much opportunity to kind of go off the hip, off the cuff with some big news story coming out, or something like the Grammy nominations, or anything outside that one very specific Fantano wannabe bubble, and so I think that definitely in hindsight let me kind of expand to doing other various music nerd content kind of things that maybe did expand into what I post on my various places now.
Yeah, because I mean, you still do music based things in your free time, or in your not even just your free time, the stuff that you do for publications and stuff. You keep busy still in the music scene.
Yeah, because for those of you that don't know, which I imagine is most of you, the main thing that I do for paying rent right now is I write and edit videos for this publication under UMG called You Discover, where I basically do these kind of pop-up video style short form things with the various things in the UMG back catalog, and so that kind of dovetails into what I do on TikTok now, which is definitely my main outlet over the last 5 or so years. And while, obviously podcasts are the opposite end as far as runtime.
Length of time, yeah.
And we're not going to be, don't worry guys, we're not going to be turning this into a clip farming podcast where it's a way too well-lit studio. And we'd roast each other for 5 minutes because we said one letter sound wrong in a word, or we have some kind of hot take about bathroom etiquette or something. We're not going to become, we're not going to become one of those. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. We're gonna stay a podcast in the sense of how podcasts used to be.
Amen. I'm kind of reminded of how WTF with Mark Maron is ending right now, but we're flying that flag for good old Gen 1 casting, audio only. You don't want to see what's happening on this screen right now. It's very badly lit on this Discord call.
What would a podcast be without technical difficulties? Am I right?
Yeah. Okay, so just pick up where you left off.
Yeah. Well, like you said, traditional podcast. Audio only, technical difficulties. We got liner notes about what we got to do. We're doing this really like radio style production, folks. For the reunion, for 10 years. 2015 was a long time ago, which is something that's sort of been a thread throughout the year as well. So it's like a fun, remember this? Which we'll get into more deeply later on in the show. But I figured one of the things we do, and we kind of did like a brainstorming about what this podcast is really going to entail, sort of theme-wise and like subject-wise. And it is going to be a lot of like the past and the present coming together. But we're going to start by going mostly way back to some degree by talking about what we've been listening to lately.
What have you been listening to lately? What are the songs that you just gotta play me? The question comes up weekly, nightly, daily. So what have you been listening to lately? None.
Hey, okay, that was another jingle.
Who the fuck made that song? That sounded like ass, man. It sounded like it was done on like some shitty Tascam interface with a set of electronic drums that the guy had no clue how to program. Disgusting. I want to punch him a lot.
So one of the things we talked about that kind of surprised me was hearing you say that you had like other jingles that you made. Were they like for productions, or were they just things that you like just were cooking up at the time?
I mean, there were a couple different segments of this very show that I think we peppered in every now and then. That's about it, basically.
Okay. Well, the one that like we had in heavy rotation was What Have You Been Listening To Lately? And it was the one that felt the less like involved, because we had like ones where we recommended an album and then we broke it down like track by track almost, and the like. But when we talked about doing this idea, you brought up the concept of doing a sort of best of your first listens that you have done this year.
Because something that I like kind of keeping track of over the course of the year, especially because in the time since I've gotten like a Rate Your Music and stuff, is like the first like the best albums not from 2025 that I listened to for the first time in 2025.
I know, and I feel the same way. I find myself doing that mostly in the context of making things. So like when it came to like, especially over the last couple of years, when you brought this up as a concept, I was thinking about what I've listened to that wasn't new. And it's mostly when it comes to like albums, it's like mostly stuff I've done for discography reviews. But there have been a couple instances of like catching up for X, Y, or Z where that has honestly crept in to what I've done. But you'd propose doing like a best list of that. And how many did you start with and how many did you trim down to is my question.
So truthfully, I didn't trim down at all. What I did was I basically went to my Rate Your Music, fully involved mark on Rate Your Music. If you care to follow me on there, I'm always looking for more people to follow on there. It's a fun site.
Bam.
But people talk about where's the letterbox for music? It's been there since fucking 2000.
Time. Yeah,
it's been there the whole time. If you're not willing to deal with a 2000 type web interface, that's your own damn skill issue. Okay.
Yeah, like what I love for them to have an app. Yeah, but I think that the site is fine.
Yeah, absolutely. We need something. It's like we were talking about. Analog audio only podcasting. We need some good shitty web interface. It can't all be streamlined.
Squarespace can't make everything, guys. It's gonna start to look boring. Okay.
Exactly. but where I'm going with that is that so I took basically all of the albums I gave a 9 out of 10 or a 4.5 out of 5 on there, and I'm just gonna rattle down the list. And you just stop me if you have a thing to say in response to that.
Okay. I'm down. So what I did, I had a list of, so I originally had like a list of 5. And we were talking about like maybe having more, but like honestly, there is a lot of like Rico Nasty's first album, which is fine, but I don't really have much to say about it. Whole Lot of Red by Playboi Carti. It's fine. I know neither of us have a whole lot we really want to say about that. So I'm sorry,
folks. If you tuned in here looking for the most on-beat Playboi Carti takes, I'm sorry. You're gonna leave this sorely disappointed.
Yeah, I gave his new album a 4. Like I'm not that big a fan of Carti's music. Dial It is pretty good, but like that's it.
I have nothing to say in response to that. See? I am not informed whatsoever.
And this is a podcast. It is a dialogue. So I've got 6. I've got 6 albums that are like in various avenues as to what brought them onto the plate and all that sort of stuff. So we can go through your list first and go through that and then go through my shorter list to close out the segment.
Hell yeah, because going through these, there's a couple different categories, I'd say. A couple of them are like the fact that it's embarrassing that I just heard it for the first time in general. Okay. And the other category is just like discography catch-ups or like stuff I was assigned in a Discord server's album exchange thing or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to rattle through these from stuff from the start of the year up until now. You just stop me if you feel like there's something to say.
You got it.
Yeah, so the first one, Bob Dylan's Highway 61 Revisited. Only heard it for the first time this year. Oops, I'm bad at dad rock fan culture. Sorry. Turns out. And then after that, and catch up for the new Jason Isbell record, I finally listened to Southeastern and Something More Than Free. Those are both incredible.
So, I gotta know, what was that your first? That wasn't your first like Dylan album, though.
Of course not.
So, what was your first? So, like, what other albums of his had you heard before this?
I'm so glad you phrased it like that because, I did own, Blood on the Tracks and Bring It All Back Home.
Classic.
But something happened a couple of years ago that kind of made my answer for that a lot more interesting. So a couple of years ago, I picked up from this record store in Huntington Beach this bootleg that was Bob Dylan fronting Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, I guess at some point in the mid-'80s.
Huh.
I guess it was for like a one-off show or something like that. But I figured, okay, if I'm going to be able to take in this material, I might as well listen to the albums that these Dylan songs came from, and that'll give me a good excuse to get a little more well-versed,
Yeah.
The thing about that was, this is from the mid-'80s. And so because of that, I did listen to Bringing It All Back Home, which was great. But it also led me to Self-Portrait and Shot of Love and Empire Burlesque. And to be clear, I knew what I was going into those, obviously. Okay. I knew it would be funny going in, and yet I did it anyway just so I can eventually say it on a platform like this, I guess. Like, I knew, of course, that this was the Christian era and the one synth pop album and the double album that almost killed his career, basically. But here we are. And I'm glad at it.
I admire that gumption. Admittedly, that's an era of Dylan I'm not all that familiar with. I think the most recent album of his, I've Spun, No, I think it might be Desire, which I own a copy of, but like I think that's the last like most recent, because I haven't listened to any of his new stuff. Like I know he dropped something like a couple of years ago, but yeah, I think Desire is the most recent Bob Dylan album I've spun, and it's great. I love Desire; it's a really good album. But okay. I had that the fact that you went from that and then immediately were like, and then these two Jason Isbell albums, which are great, like, but that's a real strong start.
Yeah, and then from there, I did some catch up. Actually, what's really funny is when you do catch up on an artist's discography and you love the records you listen to in the catch up, but the actual new album is just okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, Historian by Lucy Dacus. I'm sorry. Don't come for me. I can at least tell you, hey, Historian is my favorite album of the entire Boy Genius crew that I've heard. Still haven't gotten into Julian, but hey, there's that at least. Yeah, and then from there, I'm just going to keep listing off. X-Ray Specs, Germ-Free Adolescence, that came from one of those exchange things, and I now have a t-shirt of them, as well as a copy of the album that didn't get a US release until like the 2000s.
Okay. So you had like that kind of like real that kind of resonated with you pretty hard then?
Absolutely. It's extremely ahead of its time stuff. Then Bachman Turner Overdrive, Not Fragile, a very interesting example of like you get a $3 bin classic rock record for the one song that was a hit, and wow, the rest of it is actually good. That doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah.
Just like the whole thing goes just as hard as you ain't seen nothing yet. You love to see it. I also, here's an embarrassing one. I got Michael Jackson's Off the Wall, which I'd only heard the hits from, and I just like saw a copy for $5 at this record fair that I was at with a friend, and I was like, yeah, okay, good excuse as any to actually hear the other songs. And this was around the time that Mike the Snare was doing his DDD on him, so it just lined up perfectly there.
I almost got a copy of Off the Wall at a antique function when I was in Minneapolis about a month ago. Or earlier this month, I guess. We were walking around and they had a copy like amidst. There was like 5 different vendors that had records for sale, but one of them, like a bunch of it was like the stuff you normally see that didn't end up that at like a regular record store, like a lot of like Christmas comps and stuff like that. But there was one vendor who had like a decent selection. They had Rush's 2112 on CD. They had the Downward Spiral on CD, but then they also had like Off the Wall on record. They had something else that I almost got, but I ended up getting anything at that place. But no, what did you think of Off the Wall? Are you much of a Michael Jackson fan? I really don't know your take on a lot of his music.
I mean, I feel like I don't have anything novel to say. I do like it better than the 2 albums that followed. I can at least tell you
really?
that.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very much on the Fantano camp on Thriller, where you can't call an album a 10 if it contains The Girl Is Mine.
Oh yeah, I like Bad.
That's just
more
a
than
natural
Thriller.
Thing.
Like I'm one of those people. I like Bad more than Thriller. I don't know if I like Off the Wall more than Thriller, but that's like to each their own.
Yeah, so I'm just going to keep running through these. I hadn't heard the first Black Sabbath album or Master of Reality.
That's true.
Sorry.
No,
I timed it at the perfect time, right before.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, Master of Reality is a great record, and the first album is really good too. But I don't think that either are amongst my favorite Sabbath albums. I like Paranoid more than both. Did you kind of walk away feeling the same way?
I mean, they're all like 9 out of 10 S tier for me personally, you know. So it's kind of all of a kind, you know. On top of that, another one that came in a Discord record exchange. I'm finally in the process of getting Ween pilled.
Nice.
But it was specifically with Quebec, which is their sad album.
Yeah.
that was a fun gateway because, like, you know Ocean Man, obviously, and I'm aware that I will eventually be completely wean-pilled and become much more annoying of a person as a result, but we haven't reached that yet. For now, I just love the one album where they're going through some shit and getting divorced, apparently.
I'm just shocked that, like, Ocean Man didn't wean pill you already. Like, I'm really a little surprised, just because, like, that there's a lot of like reference points. Like, I don't know, it is a big inspo to SpongeBob, so like that's kind of crazy.
Well, yeah. I mean, and for the record, the SpongeBob movie soundtrack, I will say time and again, I will evangelize, was my gateway to all of indie rock culture, basically. So I completely understand that. You'd think it would have been for that.
I really do. Like, I'm honestly a little shocked. And especially, I mean, like, not that I don't think you won't like the Mollusk or their other, like, huge record, but, like, I think Quebec is a record that you would enjoy, like, regardless anyway. So it's interesting that it's your gateway. But again, just adding layers to it. Also, to tangent 1 second, because you mentioned him, have you listened to the Ice by SpongeBob song yet? Has it been in your rotation at all?
I've seen one quote dunk of it on Twitter, and that's all the exposure I care to have.
That's all you need. It's not a good song. It's not a good song at all.
Yeah. And well, I mean, we're foreshadowing. We're gonna be getting into someone who collaborated with that person at one point in a very famous way.
Yeah,
but moving on from that, I've also been getting more and more into Sparks. So freaking Lil Beethoven propaganda bangers all the way through. I've used Lil Beethoven songs in many a Music League round just because it's just like taking two phrases and then making them mean different things over the course of a song. A lot of the albums just like taking the piss out of nu metal. It's awesome. In terms of a couple other embarrassing ones, it's interesting because like I do technically have Prince's Purple Rain on here, but it doesn't feel like I should because, like, you know, it's one of those records where you've heard 80% of it just from existing in society, but I just never listened to it from track one to the last track.
Did it give you any sort of like enlightenment filling in those sort of gray areas in the record? Did it make it feel more like a complete portrait, or did it just kind of feel like, yeah, I get it, I already got it, cool?
Well, I mean, it's a 9 out of 10 record in the sense that, like, yeah, all of these songs are perfect, so just by nature, I must assign it this.
Yeah,
you know?
The album is just that good.
Yeah, and then from there, I have the first Violent Femmes album.
Oh my god!
Bowie.
What, Mark? Come on! No.
I love that. Out of everything mentioned here, Off the Wall, Purple Rain, Black Sabbath's debut, that is the one that sparked that reaction out of you.
That is like. It feels like something you would have really enjoyed earlier in life. I love that album. I used to have it on CD in high school. Like, I love the Violent Femmes debut. I did a video on it forever ago.
I'm gonna have to check that out. But well, I mean, because I had like one earlier on. I had like an '80s hits compilation that had Blister in the Sun on it, and so I knew that song all along the way, and then obviously, you know, a couple other songs from that you just kind of hear.
Yeah.
But what happened, my exposure to it came, one very fun thing I've gotten into this year is estate sales. Because unlike record stores, the people selling those records at estate sales frequently do not know what they're worth.
Yep.
Or just don't care.
Yep.
And so as a result, like, I was going to a house and everything was $3, and I ended up getting I wound up getting 3 albums from 1983 that were $3 each. It was Madonna's debut, it was Soul Mining by The and Violent Femmes debut. And I brought it home to Discogs, and what do you know? It's worth a lot more than that.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. You lucky man.
Yeah.
That's oh, man. Yeah. It's the most 90s album of 1983.
Absolutely. And like, I don't know, there's something about, like, between bands like that and like even like early Elvis Costello stuff, where it's like that specific type of anger where like if you wrote it down on paper it would sound incel-y, but just like in the context of like that time and how they're framing the songs and how it's like supposed to be kind of unlikable, like it all just comes together in this like perfect kind of like you understand the POV as it's being said.
Absolutely. You know? It's very like it's incel is like very on the nose way to describe the songwriting, but like it's not that. It's very it's very much just like not disenfranchised, but it's like self
loathing,
deprecating, loathing, yeah. But like in again, it's a very 1992 way. They just saw in the future and were like, this is what music is going to sound like in 10 years. Us and REM,
Absolutely.
But we're not going to... All we're going to do in the 90s is do a song for SpongeBob. And they did...
Absolutely.
They also did a cover of Eep Op Work Ah-Ah. That's pretty good in the 90s.
Yeah. And then the last two I got on here, Bowie, Aladdin Sane, and I maybe saved the most sacrilege I hadn't heard until now for last, Discovery. By Daft Punk.
We talked about that. That is crazy, man. Like, it's I mean, I know you've heard like parts of it in culture because it is like one of those records. But like,
well, there's four songs from it that like if you were a person in society. But but it's also like it's also like a full CD long.
Yeah.
So it's one that you can see yourself kind of kicking the can down the road on up until now, and I'm glad that I actually did, because I listened to Face for the first time, and then I was able to play it in a Music League round on non-rap songs that use samples.
Nice.
And that has a lot of them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, are you much of a Daft Punk fan, like, outside of this? I know you've heard other songs that they've done because they're inescapable. But what's your real feeling on them?
Well, I'd really only heard, honestly, the only album I'd heard in full was Random Access Memories, like at the time, and for some reason I just didn't take that as the impetus to binge the entire catalog like a dummy.
And
yeah,
that it's
so
a different
that
vibe,
yeah.
it may have not like piqued your interest, No,
it would have. I just was doing other shit then, I suppose. But yeah, that is a far too long what have you been listening to lately list that encapsulates the last 11 months. I guess, if that counts as lately.
Hey, that counts as lately. Lately is a state of mind.
Maybe the real lately was the friends we made along the way.
Yeah, was the violence we femmed along the way. My list is 6, and it starts with one that already kind of cusps on that mid territory, if only because like it's just interestingly mediocre. It is
the best kind of mediocre.
Yeah, it's the debut for a side project that I love all the other records of, from Mike Patton. It was like his mastermind with like Dave Lombardo from Slayer on drums. There's members of like Mr. Bungle in the band. Fantomas. All of their records are like niche concepts. Their first record, their debut was like self-titled. It was inspired by the like Italian comic book hero that the band's namesake is for. Again, it's very like hyper-focused. Conceptually, lyrically, sonically, it's not that. It's a lot of like just dissonant, avant-garde experimental music. Like, and it's not bad, but like because the rest of the discography at least like tries to stay on brand, so to speak, or at least goes like into something interesting because the production is just so well done, or like the great production helps like accent the madness. This like raw debut is just like bafflingly not good. Like it's not interesting in the same way.
Gotcha. I have yet to be patent pilled, so I have nothing to contribute here.
I assume that would be the one out of the I guess a couple of the other ones, maybe not a whole lot, but like that was the one that was like on the cusp of like he probably won't have much to say. But the one I did listen to was in prep for the Soundgarden discography review. Their last album, King Animal, which feels even more timely considering, hey, they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame now.
Oh yeah, if you, by the way, that's another thing I've become fixated on in recent years. What up? I can say things about that, but continue.
I liked the album. It was very much like, it was a weirdly bittersweet record to listen to in hindsight, just because it's a record that feels like it's trying to be reborn, only for it to be their last moment in music. It also sonically just sounds like a band from the 90s making an album in the mid-2010s, so like production-wise it's not doing anything that helps their sound. It just doesn't sound all that interesting.
Okay.
The other one is one that I showed you that I bought, and when I looked at Rate Your Music, I realized I hadn't rated it, and I realized I hadn't listened to it in full yet until buying it. But Bigger Than Both of Us by Daryl Hall and John Oates.
Okay.
It's not my favorite album of theirs. I don't regret buying it, just because I like having something that has Rich Girl on vinyl, but or on a physical media. But I would say there are records of theirs that I would rather have over this that I don't have.
I mean, over the years, I've one by one tried out Hall & Oates albums to see which ones do actually hold up beyond the hits, and there's a very select few I feel like that do. Voices, Private Eyes, Abandoned Luncheonette, those. And then there's the ones that come in between where you just kind of forget them. Although the one big exception, have you heard War Babies, the one produced by Todd Rundgren?
I have not, no.
That one is insane. You got to give that one a shot.
I have to give that one a spin. Yeah.
It's exactly what you would think them working with Todd
like
Rundgren would sound like in 1974.
Okay. Okay. That's wild. But I think that this, I would agree, this kind of falls in the camp of it's not offensive bad past the hits, but I don't know how much I'll spin this over wanting to spin Private Eyes, because I have a copy of that, if I'm ever clamoring to listen to something on my record player. One that I don't think you'll have a whole lot to say about, but I did really like going back to, was going back and spinning in full, West Side Gun's Pray for Paris. If you were I know you're not much of a Griselda hip-hop head, but that was another one that I spun.
My main exposure to what he sounds like is Graydon's impression from Hive Mind.
Fair enough. One that
crack to a pine tree. That's another thing, is that whenever two guys are talking on the internet for an hour and it involves music, it's basically wannabe Hive Mind now. It's just inevitable.
But we predate them, man, and also only one of us has ever worked with Brad Taste in music, so
True, but only one of us has interviewed Bobby Caldwell, so
That's fair.
We gotta take the L on this one.
Vince Staples' Stolen Youth is the other album. It's the album that I put in the number 2 slot. It's an album that he had that was produced by Mac Miller. It's got cool production. It's early Vince, prior debut Vince, probably at its peak. It's good. And then the other one is Every Time I Die's second album, Hot Damn. It is their very unleashed degeneracy, produced in a raw way that just helps enhance that kind of carnal feeling. I did a discography review on that too. Go watch it if you want.
Yeah.
And that is what we've been listening to lately. Now we're going to cut to me in another dimension, and another time, and another place. One of the things I wanted to do with this podcast was have a moment to talk about the 2 albums that came out in October that I spun at the end of October. I spun them starting the weekend that they came out, ironically enough, and then kept them on my rotation throughout November with intent to talk about them, along with the stuff that I've also spun and haven't talked about yet in the listening log format. But I wanted to use this listening log to talk about, make it a listening log before going into the Mad Sounds version of that format, by talking about 2 records that I also wanted to spare Mark on, because they are both steeped in their own headspaces and worlds, so to speak, their own mythos. both philosophically in the case of Aesop Rocks, I heard it was a mess there too, and literally steeped in celeb drama in the second Divorce album from Lily Allen, West End Girl. Two records that I was very interested about, and that's kind of why they ended up on my plate at a time when I was sort of like dissected from a lot of what was coming out new music wise. But really, while maybe not necessarily loving either to the fullest degree of other records that they have done, I think are still great slices of different flavors that I like from these artists. I Heard It's a Mess There Too is a record that was a surprise. It was just something Aesop, I learned while, looking at one of his various Instagram Q&As, he was sort of working on in tandem with Black Hole Superset already. I almost said Supermarket, Black Hole Superset already. But was sort of like trying to finish that before putting any sort of polish on this very minimal, very like atmospheric sort of just tight release that I honestly kind of like seeing Aesop tackle. While I've talked about it a lot in the discography reviews and updates and all that sort of stuff on his music, on how much I've appreciated his sort of pilgrimage on these greater reining in of themes and self-reflection into this sort of visual backdrop. I like that I Heard It's a Mess There Too sort of just gets to the heart of Ace's mindset in the messy times that are now. He still sort of gives it his own narrative, not necessarily narrative, but like world building twist, putting himself through the POV of like an alien coming down to Earth from his spaceship, having an observance of the chaos that is the now, but also a very sort of alien feeling within that now that I think translates really well and creates sort of a good pairing with the spacey ambience that is the production palette of this. There's a real focus on bass on the production of this that I think is absolutely tight. I think that like the bass organ on Bag Lunch, which has this very like throwback feel to its construction as far as verses go, where he's got this just sort of flip on That's What's Up that gets sort of continued throughout Spin to Win, has this interesting songwriting pairing that I think creates an interesting little groove. It sees Ace in a pocket and really just trying to keep good vibes, but with a sort of sly attitude to it beneath that. That sort of comes out more in a direct fashion on tracks like Oh My Stars. That still has like a cattiness to it, but I think still splays really strongly. I'm kind of two minds of it though. I do really appreciate, it almost feels like not necessarily directly, but it sort of feels like the person in the world of Black Hole Superette, but further bridging the realities of the world from that to the world of this, so to speak. It's not necessarily wrapped up in concept. It's very much a lean, just tight series of tracks from Aesop, but there's still like tangents to it, and I think that's just sort of a testament to Aesop's artistry, maybe. But there's a component of that, especially as the album rounds its bend, that it sort of like feels like it's bridging itself, even if it is feeling dissected in its minimalism. It's also got like other bars that like there's a bar to Alerting that is Shirtus Kirkland, a sort of nod to assuming Costco, one of the singles from Black Hole Superette. But yeah, this is very much Aesop just kind of like keeping it brief and concise, but enjoyable, and a nice sort of breath of something else amidst these more hour-plus long, thematically driven, conceptual, so to speak, pieces. I like this sort of like break from that, while again having some artistry that maybe could be seen as ties to that, very much sits in its own independent lane. And also, he's just got some good, again, pairs of biting, scathing bars in tandem with these just kind of like dejected feeling at the now, and sort of like observing the chaos in the now and frustration, so to speak. I like this though. I like I Heard It's a Mess There Too. I think that like if you like Aesop Rock and you want to hear him still keep his ever eloquent, wordy pen still sharp, but just leaner. This is a good avenue to explore, personally. As far as ratings, if you're wanting me to rate this album, give it like an 8 out of 10. It's really, really good. I don't know if I like it as much as Black Hole Superette, but I do really enjoy the vibes that he's got throughout a lot of this. The production is honestly really, really choice. And part of me prefers some of the production and minimalism explored on here than on Black Hole Superette. So just, I don't know. Rating wise, 8, but I also really, really like it and think that it's pretty fucking choice. As far as the Lily Allen album though, West End Girl, I'm of two minds of this, because when her last album, No Shame, came out, I really enjoyed the sort of flirtations with the contemporary that were throughout a lot of that, and it felt like a really nice sort of like freeing sort of experience record, and like considering it as another record where she's talking about like being from divorce, it is an interesting sort of like co-evaluation reflection on that versus where she sort of takes that same heartache, or at least like that same emotion, if not channeled differently, because I'm assuming her relationship with her ex was not the same as her relationship with David Harbour, because there's a real confessional side to this record that just really hits hard, and I think is where the album shines its brightest. I think also the way that she sort of like pairs different modern influences with her love of more fuller arrangements creates some cool songs on both pairs. But I think that the focus on theatricality and how some of that confessional songwriting sort of shows some of the aging maybe that Lily Allen's taken as a songwriter is where the album sort of stumbles in some regards, but I think that like by and large there is a solid culmination of songs here that I like really think do work well. And I feel for Lily Allen, honestly, as far as like seeing what her relationship with David Harbour, as far as like her perspective on it and everything, was how it was transpired on here, was crazy. Like, I didn't know, I don't think anybody knew, because I had seen when they had gotten married, and I was kind of excited for the two of them, you know. I don't know, I like Lily Allen's music. I've talked about a lot of her discography. I think she's got some genuine classics. And I think that like I would have never expected her to get caught up with like David Harbour's bullshit as far as like wanting this other side of her relationship with like sex addiction, and like him tackling that but in like a very unhealthy way, and like also then finding out that he was lying to her by having this constant other person amidst all of those what were supposed to be like one-off hookups in the person of Madeline. You know, the song about Madeline and her discovering that is honestly like one of the biggest highlights on the album. The like embracing of like flamenco guitars really adds to the drama of that song, and I think it's a moment where that drama really reaches a nice peak, as opposed to like the reenactment of the like Skype call or like FaceTime call at the end of the opener, West End Girl, that I think I get why it's there in theory. I just think that the execution, it's crazy, and is kind of like an interesting stumbling into what is a really good stretch after the opener. I think the opener, the title track, is a solid start, but it's got kind of like a dodgy transition and just ruminating and sleepwalking. Two tracks that almost play out like the nightmare after that phone call transpires. And it's a really good moment that kicks the record off. It's just, again, a little bit stumbly. I also think that, like, after Madeline and Relapse, two very, again, where that confessional songwriting shines, especially with Relapse talking about, like, the problems of really the sex addiction, I guess, that, like, David Harbour has been going through. But, like, that into like Pussy Palace and 4chan Stan, where it kind of talks more about like culture and like I guess David Harbour's piece in that. It's kind of a moment where the album loses me a bit, but I think the album really does sort of come around a lot to throughout some of its back half. I do think that like the album as a whole is strong when it's more leaning into a loving of both sides of musical inspiration. But again, that theatricality is where the album sort of like really falters when it does. I hope Lily's well. I hope her and her daughter are okay. Fuck David Harbour, because that shit's crazy. I'd give this album like a 7 out of 10 though. I think it's really, really solid. In hindsight, I would give No Shame less. I gave No Shame a 7 when it came out, and that's kind of where I was of two minds with this album at the beginning of this review. I like this album in parts more than No Shame, but I think No Shame is a less weird spin, if that makes sense. I think that the sonics are less interesting than on this album, but I do think that like No Shame is a solid album that I should revisit again. But I think that like with this in the rear view, I like it more than No Shame. But those are the things I had to say about the two albums I listened to in October. Now let's go back to us in the past.
No, come back. No.
Yeah, we're back from the dimension of me in the different time where I talked about Aesop Rock and Lily Allen.
Oh, thank God.
Now we're going to talk
about... Thank you for not dragging me into that. I haven't caught up on either of the Aesop albums, and the discourse around that Lily Allen one sounds like a lot.
Yeah. It's wild to listen to.
And you just heard it now, so you don't need us to recap that now.
Exactly. Now we're going to talk about... So when we were concocting the format for this cast, Mark talked about integrating some segments that I do on the channel that would kind of fit at home in the Mad Sounds podcast, and I would agree. And one of them is the listening log update. And Mark does not indulge in new music quite to the volume that I do, but what we did was he's going to talk about two albums that he's been spinning in his free time that I have also spun, and we'll kind of talk about that. Then he proposed we suggest two albums for the other to listen to, and we're going to talk about my suggestions to him after we talk about what he's listened to, and then we'll close out with stuff that he suggested that I listened to.
Yeah, and now two things I'll add to that. One, I do got to refute, like, I feel like I do keep up with new albums more than the average person, not on your level and volume and quantity.
That was more what I was getting at. Yeah.
I'm currently in kind of an ebb year right now where I'm not really getting I'm more kind of just keeping up with the acts that I've gotten into, that I've been previously into. This hasn't been quite as much of a new discovery year outside of me getting into discovery. But I'm Tish. But yeah, so I have been keeping up with new records, as you'll see with what I've recommended here and what's being recommended back at me. But the other thing is that, so one segment that we did a couple of times involved the Grammys. Specifically, we would do like a predictions and picks, and then later on we would revisit that by, going over what happened. The thing is, though, because this being a one-off reunion show, as it were, we can't really do that once March or February or whatever rolls around. And so what I've devised is that when we recommend albums for each other, it'll be one album that's nominated for a Grammy and then one that's not.
Yes. That was part of the contingencies that we laid out for our recommendations.
Yeah.
But before we get into the suggestions, the two albums that you listened to lately that are newer involve a newer record and one from earlier in the year that I ironically enough also got a redux that I ended up not spinning as much but still spinning. Danny Brown's Stardust and Clipping's Dead Channel Sky.
Yeah, and, like I said, I haven't really been... This has really just been a year of, like, keeping up with the faves, which, of course, me not really having that deep of a hip-hop knowledge just means, like, I've got, like, my 5 that I latch onto, and then whenever they happen to release stuff, I'll listen to those.
Yeah.
And 2 of those just so happen to be those 2. Yeah. And just so happens that next week I am going to be seeing... Actually, my concert's next week are going to be interesting because this Sunday I'm seeing Al Jardine from the Beach Boys doing a kind of tribute set to Brian Wilson. Very sweet, very wholesome, albeit with a lot of apparent Beach Boys Love You material. But still, you can see the crowd there. And then later on in the week, on Black Friday, I'm going to the Observatory in Santa Ana, where I'm seeing Danny Brown, Underscores, and Femtanil.
That's going to be a really good show.
Inside Mark are two wolves, as you see.
Both of which ended up in parts of this discussion board.
Absolutely.
Starting with the more unhinged one, though, with Stardust. I've ironically enough seen like wild pockets of discourse around this album that I kind of get, but not really, considering Danny's back catalog.
Absolutely.
Like,
I'm gonna go a step further. Like, I feel like anyone who's straight up like dunking on this album just like needs to just shut up, you know, because I feel well, and also I feel like it's very obviously, I feel like a lot of it is like very obviously just kind of dog whistling for, I don't like when you work with those people.
Yeah. You know? Like it
which
sees Danny keeping it a little. Like he's keeping it like very off kilter, which is on brand for him. Like you can't say that, like, while maybe not in the same sonic inspiration, 1999 has the same kind of madness seen on a track like Ain't It Funny. It just doesn't have like this brass sample cutting into the mix to add to the noise. It's just a very glitch hop inspired track instead.
Yeah, and I've seen the argument raised that it even goes back as far as like Old and records like that, where he was engaging in kind of indie pop of the time. Even though, granted, I'll be honest, like a lot of those kind of early 2010s club rap textures just really kind of going back to that, like that entire last third I could do without. But even with that, you know, the interesting thing for me is that since 2023, I've become very okay with being on an island as far as Danny goes, because if you look at the Rate Your Music page for Scaring the Hose, it's 20 of my friends giving it a 4.5 and then my lone 2. Just because I just don't like the way that Peggy mixes things, but there's frequencies in there that got my migraines going. I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. But then cut to Quaranta, and I'm like, oh my god, yes, there's space, there's subject matter. Yes, give me more of that, please. And I feel like this record is like the perfect kind of best of both worlds for both of those, really.
Absolutely. One record that in my notes I kind of kept calling back to for a stretch of the record, like tracks like I Love My Life, partially because of how it's stylized, text-wise, but also like the sonics of that, or like whatever the case, or like the aggressive vocals on 1999. They reminded me more of like the last couple Bring Me the Horizon albums, but like better, because I don't really wholly like what Bring Me the Horizon are doing on those albums, but I like what Danny's doing here, and they feel like they feel like cut from the same cloth, inspo-wise.
I mean, I haven't really kept up with their recent stuff, but I mean, certainly like the chorus of Greenlight has kind of a Warped Tour energy to it, you know?
Yeah, that too, yeah.
Some would say in a bad way, and I understand why. Personally, it's just so catchy that I can vibe with it.
Well, it also kind of like it Greenlight in particular kind of sonically bridges like that side, the like Warped Tour sort of like style, with like where parts of dance club music go vocally. Like I don't know, it's a cool cocktail, Stardust. I think that it's a really nice place for him to take his sound, and I like that he's trying to like, because the last time he tried to like reflect soberly was like, You Know What I'm Saying, which was a really good album, but it was like, it felt more like him almost playing it safe to get his footing back, whereas this sees him like going bold to sort of reaffirm life. And I kind of like that about it, honestly. Like it dwells in some sad places, and it really goes to the heart of why he wants to buck addiction, but like he still wants to lift you up. Another great song
Yeah.
on the album.
Well, I feel like we did see plenty of that sober reflection on Quaranta, which is a big part of why I love that record.
Yeah.
But and this is just kind of like the next step after that, where you're taking that very earnest, to the point. I feel like another thing that's maybe catching certain audiences off guard here is that there's no irony, there's no deflection, and I think this is something that Professor Sky in his review kind of goes way further into, and I won't regurgitate that, but, I feel like a lot of the crowd that would be bucking against a record like this was maybe just like all in on the kind of scaring the hose mode, or like even like with the Atrocity exhibition, where it's this kind of like fucked up, like rebelling out and like being actively kind of unappealing, whereas this record is a lot more kind of like, introspective, reaching out for community is a big part of it. And like I feel like maybe some people aren't quite ready to face that, and so they'll just call it corny and then leave it at that without doing any further soul searching about it.
What I think is crazy about I don't think that you're wrong in that sentiment, but what I think is crazy about that though is that like there are parts of this that really sort of feel very indicative of where parts of other artists that are more popular than him are dipping into, or like in vogue right now we're dipping into. Like club rap is back, but it's just got like a more modern production that helps it sound not as bad as some of the 2000s club rap did. So like parts of this, like obviously Copycats, it has like a very like boss ass bitch in the club energy, but like records like Tyler's Don't Tap the Glass or like Joey Valence and Bray's newest record talk about like soul searching in the club, and like those records are getting like relatively positive reception, some of which I don't think necessarily fits in the Joey Valence and Bray scenario, but like I think that like this has moments where it dips off into more extreme experimental territories, but that's Danny, and like I think this is his piece of that ephemera that I think gels just as well while standing on its own.
Yeah. And I think also what I really love about this record, and maybe I'm a pleb for saying this, I don't really care, but I feel like this is a perfect kind of like a sampler platter for these various hyperpop and hyperpop adjacent artists that I've just kind of heard the name of in passing in niche music nerd Discord servers, but never actually tried out before, or maybe heard one song of and was like, I'm good. Like for example, I probably could not take an entire album that sounds like 1999.
Okay.
But as just like a 2-minute kind of excursion between pop songs meant to kind of throw you off your equilibrium, I can fuck with that. I respect
that.
Even with the contributions of like Femtonal and Jane Remover and artists like that, I feel like it gels with the kind of positivity vibe going on with what Danny's doing in a way where it's a bit more accessible for a casual such as myself, that it just has this kind of euphoric feeling to it, as opposed to like, I gotta kind of take off my headphones and, yeah.
Decompress. Does it, so do you think that parts of this have you more intrigued, or because you've had those samples that you aren't into, you kind of just find yourself still sort of admiring from a distance what they got going on?
It could go either way.
Okay.
It certainly makes me more open-minded, because I did go into this as a fan of Underscores, albeit mainly through Wallsocket. Haven't been crazy about anything before or since, but if anything, songs like Copycats and Baby are giving me a lot more hope for what this next project might be, even if it's, all signs point to it not being quite as conceptual as Wallsocket, which is personally what kind of drew me into what Underscores was doing. But, if you're going to keep just making perfect pop songs, then I can live with that,
Okay. Well, tangentially, sort of, because they also embraced a club rap atmosphere, but very much went off of the deep end into their own experimental dirges. Clipping's Dead Channel Sky was the other album that you had been spinning lately and brought up in conversation. Did you listen to like the original version, or did you listen to Dead Channel Sky Plus that came out?
I haven't listened to the Plus version. I'm gonna be honest.
No, that's
I listened to the original version around the time that it came out, and it was one of my first loves of the year for sure.
I would agree. I really liked the album when it came out. I will say I have not revisited it as much as other albums that I've loved in the same breath this year. And when the Plus version came out, I listened to it and didn't think that it necessarily like added a tremendous amount. It is an album that I really enjoy still sonically, and I think that as far as like the band making this like bridging of digital culture with this like through line of deceit and shady ideas and stuff. I think it's a cool vibe. And there's some songs that are still like super big highlights for me. But it is an album that I out of ones that I've dropped this year that I've gotten a little bit colder on. This is definitely one for me, which for this group is kind of surprising because it's the opposite. I have like an attachment to, but then a growing love of their records when they come out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that as a full record, I think the replay value is a little bit hindered by just how many like interludes and like little kind of sound collage minute long things scattered throughout it there are, which obviously that's a thing for them in general, but yeah. I feel like it might have been a little too much of a percentage of the track list that's taken up with it, but I respect the hell out of it conceptually, and they can still make bangers out of it when they want to. Like I believe the songs from it that I added to my year-end playlist are like Scams, Dodger, Mirror Shades, obviously.
Yeah, Mirror Shades is.
Yeah, so there's plenty of bops and bangers to be found within this cyberpunk hellscape, which is always nice, and probably something that only they could do. Shout out Billy Idol.
I also admire how they went like so on the nose with it in the beginning with like David rapping over like the fucking dial-up sound. It's such a really cool idea that like other bands have done, other artists have like tried to work that into their sonics. But I really dig the intro to the song in particular, or to the album in particular. It sets a good tone, so to speak.
Absolutely. And I really have a... Do you just want to move on to the other ones now? Because honestly,
yeah.
Real talk, it's been about a good 9 months since I've actually like sat down with it front to back, and so I don't really have... My perspective isn't quite as fresh as it was on the Danny record, which I'm seeing the corresponding tour for next week, and Clipping are playing, in LA in like February, so hey, maybe that'll give me more incentive to come back to it, but yeah, just for now, it's just solidly in the A tier, and I'm okay with that.
Did you put Danny in the A tier as well, or did you put that in the S tier?
That's in the S tier. Currently, my two S tier ones are actually both contentious ones. It would be Stardust and Black Country New Road. With Forever How Long, largely because I got into it because I don't like how the previous guy sounds, and I got into it because I didn't like the backlash that some cute promo photos were getting, and so I was like, let me listen to this new song, and I was like, oh, this is actually great. This is actually a wonderful little Baroque pop number, and now I actively dislike anyone who dislikes this because it means you're a loser and a coward who hates women.
I would agree with that. I was confronted with that like in person. I was talking to somebody that talks up Black Country New Road, and it was around the time the new album came out, and I was like, hey, have you been listening to it? I've really been digging it. And he was like, I don't know. I don't know if I like it as much. And I was being like, why? What's your bag with it? I really dig it. I think that sonically it's a really cool sort of like inversion of the mood they had before, and I think that it works really, really well for like a being reborn, so to speak. And it was just a lot of like ums and ahs in the conversation. I was like, okay, we don't need to keep talking then.
Yeah, listen. Also, just I'm gonna be real. Anytime a record gives me like Laura Nero energy, I'm gonna fuck with it. That's just inevitable.
The complete opposite side of that sonic spectrum, though. One of the things, two of the things to go into the suggestions that we made for each other. There were two albums that I gave to you that are easily amongst my favorites of the year as well. And one of them, the one that was not nominated for a Grammy, was Anamanaguchi's newest album, Anyway. What did you take away from that record?
I'll be honest, of the two, because the other one that we're going to go over, there's a much more kind of straight down the line, like obvious liking that you can have to it in a way that doesn't really need explanation. I really have no idea where to come down on this record. So context for me and Anamanaguchi, I had really only heard Endless Fantasy back in 2013 and enjoyed that, but also was like a bit too long of the whole Sugar Rush thing, so maybe not quite the whole thing, but it had bangers on it. In fact, one of only 2 shows I've been to where the crowd was so bonkers that I had to retreat to the back.
I get that. When I saw them live recently, it was a basement show and it was pretty fucking lit, dude.
Yeah, but this obviously, I didn't listen to the album they put out in 2019, though I heard good things about it.
It's really good.
And it took another 6 years, until this, and, I'm aware of the backstory with this. This is their first one recorded as, like, a band with, like, vocals and lyrics and stuff.
Yeah.
And they recorded in the American Football House, which is cool. See, I feel like the way that you're supposed to be impressed with a record like this is if you come away with it with a sense of like, wow, you guys had this crazy talent for singing and lyrics this entire time. I had no idea. Why didn't you do this the whole time? And I didn't really have that reaction. I felt like there was like great sounding music and like nice hooks interweaved in there, but like I didn't really get much out of them as like vocalists or as like integrating the vocals into the mix in a way that totally comes together. So like I feel like I like this record, but I feel like I'm not having the takeaways from it that I'm supposed to,
That's fair. I think that because the album is produced very, like, I don't want to say candidly, but, like, the vocals don't have any, like, pop. They don't have any, like, brightness. They almost sit, like, at the same level as their guitars, which bury their, like, main shtick, which was, like, their Nintendo synth, which is still there in some moments, but, like, it's not the focus anymore.
Yeah.
I feel like I understand that kind of takeaway. I think that it's like, I don't know if it's because like they mostly worked so well on hook melodies that part of the songwriting wasn't necessarily like super shocking as somebody who has like, because they did like stuff without them singing with vocalists. Like they have songs on like USA and even some on like Endless Fantasy where there is like a vocal hook. So like it is sort of just like a coming round on that and embracing it as a whole. I still get a lot of love out of it. It's been a record that I can't seem to put down. But I understand because I was talking to like to Shake about it. And I know I'm kind of like talking in circles for a second here. I was talking to Shake about this album, and he kind of had a similar but even more intense like, it's not bad. It's not necessarily, and I think he had the same reaction you did, where like he felt like he was supposed to be more wowed by the fact that they were singing now and just wasn't. And I don't necessarily think that I was. I did think it was a fun novelty for them to do. But I think I just really like the songs. I think they schmack.
You know what it is? I think it's that this is a band that's like 15 years into dialing in their sound, but they're kind of on their first try as like songwriters and lyricists.
Yes,
and as a result, there's kind of a deficit where like the music is expert and the vocals and songwriting are local band.
Yeah. One song that I like, but even like upon first release, I don't think that lyrically it was the biggest wow, was Darcy. I like Darcy. It's a fine enough song, but lyrically it kind of reads like my first attempt at loving 90s pop rock.
Funny enough, that was my favorite song on there.
Really? I like Darcy, but I like Magnet a lot more.
That one's cool too. I mean, the thing is, I feel like that's the, Darcy, quite frankly, best Weezer song in a decade, probably.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the one where I feel like the vocal melodies actually fit in with the music and the riffs and like really lock in together. And it's very simple from a lyrical perspective, but I feel like that kind of serves them because they've never been by nature, never been the deepest band in the world in the first place. And so kind of having like a simple like, hell yeah, man, we love this homie that we know who's helped out with our gigs and stuff. Sometimes that's all you need,
That's fair. And it is. I wasn't dogging it like it was a bad song, but I think that like, especially out of the singles, because it was the lead single, it's one that I don't like as much as other songs, but it is a really good one. What were some of your other big like takeaways other than Darcy? What were some of the songs you really liked from it?
Honestly, like just like the singles, Sparkler, Rage, Magnet, and what was I did like the Cure Worship on Valley of Silence. That was cool.
Oh, yeah.
I will say, as the album went on, like I did start to feel some ear fatigue, like sonically, because I felt like in basically every song in the last third, except for Darcy, like something about like the high frequencies started coming in, and I started feeling like, again, a real kind of ear fatigue as these kind of louder, punkier kind of sounds were coming in. It was clearly their first time, recording screams or like a real kind of punk beat without the aid of like a chip tune to soften it.
Okay.
And so parts of it just came off a little too harsh for me. But, I can respect the attempt. Regardless, I respect what this represents, and I could totally see them refining it or meshing it in within what they usually do going forward. I'm like, hey, good for you guys.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm glad that I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad you at least took away a positive from the album. Do you feel the same way with the very pocket song stylings of Pink Pantheress on her bop-filled Fancy That?
Yeah, I love that shit, man. That we don't need to get contentious on this one.
It's so good.
This is just This is just the one where you go to the Rate Your Music and all of your friends. It's just like 12 straight 4 out of 5s.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean. And like I knew exactly that's what it was going to be going in. Like I've like been aware of her over the years, especially in like 2020 TikTok when Just For Me, when that song was like a big thing on there. Although it was funny because I'd gone this whole time just assuming that was the breakout hit. And then when I'm scrolling back through her discography on Spotify before getting into this record, I'm like, wait, what's this song with 1 billion streams?
Yeah,
that I've never heard.
Yeah.
And turns out it's only like the 4th most streamed song on that album.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm not as in touch as I thought.
I got, so one of the things that I was on a 10-hour car ride a couple weeks ago when I was on my way to Minneapolis, and one of the things I did was I got my wife into Pink Pantheress more. We listened to her whole discography and then some, because it's all really small. But
sorry, I see. The funny thing about that is that you'd think it would be like Anamanaguchi BF, Pink Pantheress GF, but you're both in this case.
Yeah, I am very much just both the lover of the bright, loud rock music and the loving, bright, infectious dance pop.
Yeah. It's got to be kind of a power move to turn your wife onto the girly pop and have been on that wave before them.
It is something that I bask in as a fan of music. But I will say,
but anyway, this is great.
Being her and it's funny you mentioned like breakouts for Pink Pantheress, because she's been an artist that just has perpetually over the last 5 years made these songs that just keep being trendy. But like this album in and of itself, because Illegal has just taken the next step of being a popular song that some are like, oh, this is a good breakout for her, but it's not. It's just the next step in evolution to her becoming this just queen of bops.
Well, what's funny is that, like, what's interesting is that, like, if you look at it in terms of, like, Hot 100 metrics, like, she's technically a one-hit wonder.
Yeah.
You know, just because Boys Liar just became like it's this whole other thing. And like, you know, I like watched up on interviews, and she seemed to, you know, she had the mindset of like, with I guess the album that came with that, of like, well, I already have this other hit. I can kind of just make a corresponding album of whatever the hell I want and not have to worry about anything going viral or whatever. And then this is kind of like a perfect, and this is like more of like a perfect kind of a meshing point between the two. And hey, if I want to go back through the discography, I know it's not going to take a long time.
It really won't, and you'll have a great time. Did you ever see the bit that she said during her Tiny Desk, where she was talking about like them coming to her with like a length of a show, and she's like, "Oh, that's no problem." She played like 8 songs.
Yeah, I did watch that in the research for this. Yeah, a lot of interviews, a lot of that. She's just like a really charming person, you know.
Yeah,
you very easy to root for.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, what I did find funny was like, you know, of course, addressed like, hey, what the hell makes this a mixtape versus an album? Because like, you know, it's pretty vibes based and arbitrary at this point, because, you know, obviously back in the day, it would have been a distribution thing, where a mixtape is just like you hand it out on the street or you upload it on DatPiff or whatever.
Yeah.
And now it's just like, well, it's all going through Spotify. You're giving it the same promo cycle. Like,
it's got a remix
difference
album.
is just vibes.
Yeah.
The difference is just vibes.
It straight up is just vibes. I think that like it's weird that she does do that, because like Heaven Knows doesn't feel all too different from this. But this, it just fits the vibes of a mixtape. Maybe because its samples are more overt. Maybe it's because like it's just got like more, it's got less creative nuance. Like she listening to like the memo versions and like the, not to get all like deep pop righty about this, but like listening to like the rough cuts to the songs of this and their finished products are interesting, because there is a layer that separates both of those components that puts it in that realm of being like a mixtape. Like Illegal's original version without its sample kind of just felt like a sad, solemn, almost like electro bossa nova song. But like when she added like an Underworld sample on top of it and gave it the dance floor treatment, it gives it new spirit.
I mean, same probably goes for the Panic at the Disco sample. And by the way, shout out, you know she's a real one because she's a pretty odd head.
Yeah.
Like,
she really knows. She really knows game. She knows ball, as the kids say nowadays.
Absolutely. And yeah, here's the thing. Like, this album doesn't really require much like dissection. Like,
No,
it's just
good.
it's 20 minutes of just like really cool drum and bassy pop songs with some cool sampling, a cool vocal delivery, a couple of songs that make you kind of blush from the flirty nature of it. You know, I added Tonight and Stateside were the ones I added to the year-end playlist.
Great songs.
And
did you listen
there's
to
really
any
not much
remixes
to.
at all?
I didn't, because that album is apparently 90 minutes long.
It is. It's a lot of the
And
same.
so-
Like I kind of, when I first dove into it, I kind of cherry picked. So I kind of feel that, because it is a lot to go through the same songs in just slightly different versions.
Yeah, I mean, so I didn't get that completionist with it. I kept it to just this 20-minute cycle here, but
that's all you need.
yeah, that was more than enough for more than enough for me to be like, yeah, it's great in the exact ways I expected going in.
Yep.
You know?
Where did you rank? Did you put these and Anyway and Fancy That in your tiers? Where did they end up for you?
Well, I mean, this one handily A tier, just like 8 out of 10 A tier, like, you know, in a very uncontroversial way.
Yeah.
I still have no goddamn idea what to do with the Anamanaguchi album.
That's fair.
I've been going between. So the problem is in our current linguistic climate, I can't say the two numbers that I was waffling between with this album, because your comment section will be ruined.
Hey,
unless you want the engagement, I can say it if you want the engagement.
I wholly
in there,
embrace
but
6-7 culture. I do it at home all the time. I did it as a joke multiple times the other day. I'm 33.
I follow dictionary.com on Twitter, and they just posted that it's their word of the year.
Yeah, it's numbers. It's cool. We live in 2025. Anything's possible. Blade Runner should have happened by now. So why can't numbers be the word of the year?
That's the spirit. Yeah. So how'd you feel about my albums?
So one of the things that the non-Grammy record that we landed on for me to listen to was Panda Bear's Sinister Grift, partially because I like me some Anko, but honestly, I haven't spun any of Panda Bear's solo stuff. And given I did like the Smile redacted treatment, I talked about the Beach Boys a bit this year. Why not talk about Brian Wilson's #1 fan in 2025, Panda Bear?
Absolutely, and obviously this year, you know, people are fiending for the Beach Boys in their lives probably more than ever, you know, to fill the void where that man once left. And like, hey, the guy came through with his most just like least weird, most here's the songs, have fun kind of album, you know?
The thing I kind of like when you kind of labeled it as like just tasteful Beach Boys worship, I was like morbidly curious, if only because like while Animal Collective over the last couple of records has really done some cool just band sounding records, when they strip it back, they lose me sometimes. Like that Tangerine Reef record, I really didn't like, but I think that as far as using simplicity and using just a good groove to make a really nice pop song out of, this is a good collection mostly of a lot of that. Like, I think that I will say, admittedly, I think it starts better than it ends, but I don't think that that's a knock to its ending. I just think that, like, it delving more into the psychedelic, losing the tasteful worship and just leaning more into psychedelia isn't a disservice, but how strong those catchier songs are just lends to a really strong start, in my opinion.
I hear you. Yeah, I hear you. I have nothing to add to that.
I think that, like, the juxtaposition of, like, some of the, I don't want to say, like, the mediated sadness. I'm looking for the note that I had about it. It was on Anywhere But Here. The sadness within idling time that goes amongst Panda Bear's lyrics versus the other side of that coin. I think it creates a really cool dichotomy to sort of lull the listener into this more hypnotic but still kind of sad state that I think works really well from like there up until Fairy Lady. Fairy Lady is just a great song. I love the horns of that song. I love the arrangement, the way that song is constructed is just choice. But like,
well, I mean, I think what's really interesting about talking about Animal Collective or Panda Bear just in general is that, you know, if you go back to how the kind of stigma that was put on them when they were like this top of the buzz band pile, around the turn of the 2010s, like you would have the impression that there are these kind of pretentious art school kind of, you know-it-all types, but you look at interviews with them and they're just very chill, normal, introspective, seemingly nice dudes. And like when you listen to a record like this, you know, there's a lot of compassion in it. There's a lot of, you know, vulnerability. And I really like it when he gets into that mode on a record like this, or even on Panda Bear Meets the Grim Reaper a decade ago, a record I defend to this day.
Does that carry the same kind of like sonic torch of this, or does it kind of more lean into the zanier side that like Anko is doing?
It's a little more quintessentially Anko, but I do think the tunes are definitely there on that in a way that maybe they wouldn't be, in a way that would maybe get distorted on a record like Person Pitch, for example.
Did you do you appreciate where the sort of, because I mean he does get really vulnerable on here, and there's sort of like a real bleakness to some of like Left in the Cold and all that. Do you still kind of like enjoy those parts of the album too, where it gets a little more minimal? Because I like that portion. I think that it's better than like Venom's in sort of like plotting sort of nature. But like I think that as far as like keeping it atmospheric, that was a pretty solid moment too.
Oh man, Venom's In is actually top 3 for me
Wow.
on there. Actually, in fact, I don't have it physically, but I'm okay with that because I got the record store at a 7-inch of Venom's
really?
In, and so I'm comfortable with that. Because they made like 750 copies of it, so I'm kind of amazed I managed to get one.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I'd say like that. And but I'd say my 3 favorites that I have on that playlist are that and the first 2, Praise and Anywhere But Here. I just love, this like nakedly Beach Boysy kind of chorus, just like juxtaposed with I think it's his daughter doing spoken word in French, I want to say.
I think it is French, yeah.
Yeah. And then like he's talked about how Praise is literally just about how he feels like he has trouble connecting with his kids sometimes.
And that's
but
like
just
it's
like
done
little
so,
things like that,
Yeah. It's done so with this with the kind of like earnestness that like it gives you a better peer into like simple but like effective delivery. But I like it. I also like that about it.
It's very much like it's the subject matter of like an indie lifer dad.
Yeah. And I'd rather it that than some other like off the wall idea, if that's really what he's got going on at the core of it all. And even in that breath, like he does do it in a way that like that is interesting still.
Absolutely, and we can maybe move from a lifer dad to a lifer great grandpa.
Yeah,
a lifer great grandpa probably by this point.
Willie Nelson's Last Leaf on the Tree. Now this sort of reintroduces something that I inadvertently did last year on the listening log, where was it last year or was it the year before? It was
last year because the Border came out in May of 2024.
Well, no, I'm talking about purely the idea of talking about an album a year after it came out. Yeah, so last summer I talked about, because I was so off the radar for Chaperone, I didn't know that Rise and Fall of the Midwest Princess came out in 2023. So I talked about it in 2024 like it was a new album. So in the same spirit of that, even though I know it's from a year prior, we're going to talk about the second Willie Nelson album from 2024, Last Leaf on the Tree.
I do want to say for the record, he's already put out 2 this year, by the way.
Yeah, I don't think I can keep up with Willie's work ethic when it comes to following his music. And that's not a disservice to what I think of the records, because I liked The Border a lot. I put it on my like top 50 of 2024, and I like this album a decent amount, even if I don't like it maybe as much as The Border. But I think that as far as like creating a record that has some well-placed ideas within like cover choice and like having a theme of like being older, being the last leaf on the tree, so to speak, outliving your peers, I think that this is a good culmination of that. There's just some covers that I don't like and like his approach to on the other side. I think both Tom Waits covers are really good. I thought it was cool that he did House Where Nobody Lives, just because from a songwriting style, that is a song that feels very Waitsian, more so than I think of if it wasn't, or Last Leaf. Last Leaf honestly just kind of feels like a song that works like too well with what like the mantra of this record is. But like House Where Nobody Lives is an example where like he took an idea and like adapted it into his style really well. The same with Lost Cause. I liked Lost Cause. I think it was a really cool cover. I love the Beck original, and I think that like the synth sort of like ambience behind that kind of gave that cover a flavor that felt like a bridging of like Willie's core with what Sea Change kind of has going on.
What's separates this record from The Border is that The Border is just a half hour of a country goat being a country goat in the exact way you'd expect, whereas this one this one is produced by his son Micah, who in like the little bit of research I did is more of like an indie rock freak folk kind of guy, and just brings in these textures and layers in a way that you wouldn't expect to back a 91-year-old man.
Yeah.
And so he was also the one bringing in a lot of these songs like The Beck or Flaming Lips or what have you, and just kind of setting them down in front of him and letting him do what he does, and just kind of, it almost feels like a cheat code sometimes, where it's like, God, like every song here could be your hurt, you know?
Yeah. I do think
he even does freaking Keep Me in Your Heart from Warren Zevon. Like, he already did that as the sad dying man to make you cry one, and now you're just doing that as well, and it also works. That shouldn't be allowed, but here we are.
That's one of the moments where I kind of felt like, I don't want to say like I called it like playing the hits, but like interpreting something in a way that fits in there. That was one. Robbed Blind was one. Are You Ready for the Country? They're all songs that like he does his thing in a way that feels very like, I am a goat, watch me do this. One example that like I wish I liked more was the Flaming Lips cover.
No.
I like it on paper, but I don't think that it like, I think that it strips it down in a way that I think makes a song that's simple on paper but bigger than life on Sonics feel simpler because it is stripped back. And I don't hate it, but like it's not my favorite thing I've heard.
Okay, yeah, fair. I think that I also have like an extra attachment to this record because, and I'm aware of how corny this is going to sound as I say it, but this came out in the first week of November 2024, and what I did on that fateful Tuesday is I drove to the beach, put this album on, and just walked along the beach and thought about life and shit. And it was a very transformative experience.
It's a good album to do that too, honestly.
So I think that unfortunately it did vault it into top 5 status for me that year. Once you give it that connection point,
that's fair.
And
that's
maybe
fair.
Makes me a bit more sentimental than the average person would be, especially because this is a guy that's literally over 100 studio albums in.
Yeah.
So
still going.
I'll even say I did not listen to the 2 albums that came out this year just because I realized like, oh, if I become a completionist, it will take over my life.
It will.
So I will just. So for now, I've stuck to those concept albums from the 70s. I'll check an album out if its idea seems interesting, but outside of that, like I'm cool leaving some gaps in the man's catalog.
I respect that
a number of them.
I don't think I could do that either. He's a hard working man, and I mean like to its credit, even though it is his 153rd album, I wouldn't say. I mean, I'd probably like if I'm doing like the ratings that I normally do out of 10. I'd probably give this like a 6 or a 7. Like I really like a lot of the ideas here, and I like some of the covers and executions, and I like that he did this sort of like album out of other ideas crockpot. It's just not my favorite thing I've heard. I'd probably give the Panda Bear record like a 7, if not an 8. I really like a lot of the collections of this. But I wouldn't say they rank amongst my favorites of the year personally. But I do think that like what Willie is able to do in general, just speaking on it as a volume, again 153. That's a lot of fucking music, dude. Like that's actually insane. Respect to the man's craft. I will never be that prolific in anything I do, and I feel like I'm pretty prolific on YouTube already.
Yeah, because as I've been kind of like reaching back through his back catalog, I just out of curiosity, I counted it out. He has not gone 1 year without releasing a studio album since 1963.
That's crazy. That's crazy talk, man.
There cannot be another person who you can say that about.
Yeah, absolutely not. And I mean, to his credit, the fact that and using covers and stuff, one could view that as like, it's cheating. You're not writing all these, but he's making the covers fit within a theme. He's making them fit within a vision that he still has.
Also, if you're you just don't like country music.
Yeah.
If you're going to come through with that complaint. You're just not talking about a country album in good faith if you don't like the idea of reinterpretation. So
exactly.
shut your hypothetical bitch ass up.
But I thank you for recommending these because I like you always come through with some stuff that'll always hit my interests in a sort of way that I really appreciate.
Yeah. I mean, also, like for the record, like freaking Redheaded Stranger is half covers, and like the whole appeal of that is that he makes them work within this concept album storyline. So that's
awesome.
Coming through with a complaint like that, it make you look silly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like a lot of great records, they'll throw one in there every once in a while. It just there's always going to be somebody. Everyone's always got something to say about something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Speaking
Who
of,
would dare say things about music? Disgusting.
Yeah, just absolutely foul. This show, though, is a show where we talk about
foul.
music. Yeah, yes. It turns 10, and what was 10 years ago? 2015. What have I been doing on the channel in pockets? Not just this year, but in other years past. Looking at records that turned 10 in the year that they turned 10. I've done it a couple times in 2015. 2015 was also the year where I started the written listening logs. And so I proposed the idea to Mark to doing a couple of album reflections or like talking about records from 2015 that you may have either changed your opinion on or that you missed initially and visited later on and felt like talking about. And I proposed Mark to pick 2, and I am going to pick 2, or I have 2 as well. What were your picks, and what guided you to those picks, Mark?
Well, I'd say that. So I suppose I picked like 2 that are records that I didn't listen to in 2015 and only listened to later, and now in hindsight would have put them on a year-end list if they were in the rotation at the time, but oh well. And then 2 that I just want to bring up just because.
Okay.
And those 2, so I actually mentioned this one earlier when I was talking about the best first listens of this year, but Something More Than Free by Jason Isbell, because I got into... Because my first full listen of his was the Nashville Sound. I think it actually would have been like in 2020 when I listened to that record proper through like a Discord listening party. And then later on, Weather Vane's immediate favorite of 2023. That is a perfect 10 out of 10 record like right there. But I still didn't go back to Something More Than Free or Southeastern up until the lead up to this record, Foxes in the Snow, which is very difficult to talk about, and I would not recommend to anyone as a first album from him, even though it is great. Something More Than Free, it's just like perfect songwriting. I feel like it's a record you listen to. I feel like weirdly kind of similar to an Aesop Rock. It's a record you listen to and you just immediately start opening up Word docs and like trying to become a better songwriter. Like I found myself like you find yourself pausing the song to revisit songs that you're working on and find better ways of painting a scene. Like it's like actively inspiring to listen to his records in that way. So then,
would you say it's the subject matter that you would say as the sort of reason why it's not necessarily a good gateway record, or is it more just sort of the approach to it?
Oh no. So I'm referring to Foxes in the Snow, which is
okay.
No. Something More Than Free. It would be a perfect entryway, that or Southeastern or Weather Vanes, or honestly pretty much any other that you've seen a bunch of acclaim for.
Okay.
Like you go nuts, but yeah, it's just 10 songs that are just him doing that, what I'm saying. I didn't really have any other notes written down, but yeah, that's what I would say for that. The other one, I actually it took a few years for me to listen to, because I got into Jeff Rosenstock through Worry, which came out the following year.
Yeah.
But I never actually listened to We Cool up until the lead up to, I believe, No Dream.
Okay.
And so that was one that I got to like 5 years later, and was just like, oh, I get why this would have put him on the map completely. You know.
Ironically enough, I don't think I've spun We Cool. I've spun Worry, and Worry wasn't my gateway into Jeff, but there's like a point of his career where he wasn't doing, where Bomb the Music Industry wasn't a thing anymore, and he was doing stuff that I think We Cool might be the biggest one of that, but like I am not all caught up on, but I've been on his career post Worry. Would you say that it's like of the same spirit, just a little more raw comparatively to Worry?
I mean, production's pretty identical. I mean, obviously it doesn't have the same ambition in the sense of like the Abbey Road style medley going through Worry and all that. But I'd say like the structures are pretty ambitious. There's like the production value is definitely there. Like you can feel like a real breakthrough happening on this record specifically. And with the same kind of introspection and the same kind of like sort of self-loathing, but like channeling it into productive means. And like I think there's a really nice spirit running through it for sure. And I'm very glad that I at least listened to it before I went to that Maximum Death Rosenstock show last year.
Compared out of the two, which do you think would have ranked higher on your proverbial year-end list that year?
Well, they didn't come out the same year. Worry came out in 2016.
No, I mean the Jason Isbell album or the Jeff Rosenstock album.
Oh.
Like, jumping back to that part of the...
That's a good question. I could see it being just depending on the day, basically, because they're very different sonic moods. Because,
they are.
Like,
I mean, I would assume. I don't know the Jason Isbell album, but I know their sounds, so to speak.
Yeah. So I think I'd maybe put the Jason Isbell one like one spot higher, just because the tunes are maybe a little more immediate and less kind of like you don't need to be like in one. I feel like with the Jeff Rosenstock, you would maybe need to be in a specific headspace. Okay. In a way that you don't necessarily need to with the Isbell, but it could go either way.
That's fair. That's fair. I had basically one of each. I had an album that I missed, which there was a handful of records when I look back at my like original ratings from 2015 that I didn't rate until like much later on. But one that really sort of stuck out to me, and one that I've revisited since more often, when like their new album was coming out this year, Hiatus Kaiyote's Choose Your Weapon. I had first gotten into them because one of their songs was on like a demo when I first started working at the company I work for now. And then I was like, who the hell are these guys? I love this vibe. And then I heard the record and I was like, oh shit, I would have eaten this shit back up in 2015. It's like funky, it's a little jazzy. It's got some nice soul influence. This shit is hot. And I like it. I think it's really, really good. It would have ended up really high on my of the year list that year because I was all about the funk even back then. I don't know if you have much experience with Hiatus Kaiyote or not.
The only thing I know about this record is that it has more dislikes than likes on the Fantano review of it. That's really the only thing I know.
He gave it a very
people bring that up.
Yeah.
I can only assume you're right. I can only assume you're more along the consensus lines on that one.
I feel like I kind of am. I don't think, because I have gone back, because when 2015 was a long time ago, discourse was rising up on social platforms, and Anthony was talking about reviews of his from that year that were hot takes. That was one that a lot of people, and I hadn't seen his review, but after listening to the album, going back and watching the review, I was like, yeah, man, no. You're a little off base with there, pal. I understand maybe some of the disconnect with the new stuff because it's a little different, but it's still in the same spirit. But like, Choose Your Weapon is mint. Great fucking record. On the opposite side of that spectrum, though, one album that I revisited when thinking about stuff from 2015 and realizing that I was already shit-talking it when talking about the band's follow-up, Blur's Reunion from 2015, The Magic Whip. A record that came and went, and after the Ballad of Darren, felt incredibly inconsequential in their discography. Are you much of a Blur fan? Do you like anything that they'd ever done?
I'll admit, I'm not gonna say I only know song 2, but I only know, like, on one hand, I know a good half dozen of the bangers, but I've not taken the dive that I feel like I should have by this point.
I think you would enjoy some of their records for sure. I think you would have an appreciation for their most recent record, even without even being removed from the discography, just because of the lyrical themes and all that. But the Magic Whip,
I don't doubt that,
is a record that feels so unnecessary. It was them being like, "We're back and still us," kind of, and it's like, all right, but heartless version. Gotcha.
In a way, like, I feel like these are some of the most fascinating kinds of records to look back on. Is like the hyped up comeback or reunion records that live or die on their hype cycle, and then like a decade later, like does it matter? Because now it's just like a past record, like all of their other past records, and so how does it hold up when it's not the new thing from them,
Well, and that's the other kind of
thing interesting.
That's the kind of crazy thing, is that they don't really, on the Ballad of Darren, I feel like they do a better job at trying to like reflect on, we've been a band for a while, whereas the Magic Whip was like, we've got an ice cream man and he's gonna stand for something, and also we got other food stuff, right? That's kind of cool. Also, we're gonna kind of sound more like a Damon's solo project in some songs for some reason, instead of a band. Like, it's a weird record to look back on, because like one of the songs, like one of the first songs in the album, it sounds like we're Blur, like we never left, but it's like, no, you were gone for like 15 years though. Like, what do you mean?
Is that your Blur impression?
That's if Blur. If all four members
this
of
is
Blur,
what Damon Albarn sounds like at all times.
if all 4 British members of Blur did the Ginyu Force, or like the fusion dance from Dragon Ball Z, they would sound like an American asshole. We're Blur, woohoo! And I feel heavy metal.
Park life.
Yeah, girls who like boys who like girls.
Do you have anything else to say on that? Because I do have a kind of like a bonus one.
All I have to say is when I finished listening to the Magic Whip, I knew I didn't do a video review of it, but I did do a review of the Ballad of Darren, and even in that review, I was like, yeah, this is much better than the Magic Whip, man. And I hadn't listened to the Magic Whip in a second since I did that review. I was just going off of pure memory, and when I responded, I was like, no, I was really cooking. This record isn't shit.
I mean, that's an interesting proposition where like the second comeback album after a decade is better than the first comeback album after a decade. You don't get that a lot.
You really don't. And maybe Blur is an example of, if it didn't work the first time, let it stew and maybe come back again, because you may make it work the next time.
Which is fair. Which is fair. So the other one that I'll mention as kind of like a side thing is, and this isn't a record that I have new feelings about, but it's one that I think has more reasons to recommend it in the wake of the last few months. So the last, we were talking about Brian Wilson Worship, courtesy of Mr. Bear. And I'm going to say it, if you want more Brian Wilson to listen to that you haven't heard, his last solo album, No Peer Pressure, from 2015, underrated as hell.
I would say I haven't listened to that.
I think because the thing about it is that it has all these like hip young guests on it. It has like Nate Ruess, who at the time was in Fun. Wow. It has She and Him. It has Casey Musgraves.
Yeah,
it has Capital Cities on one song.
That's so weird.
And like, I feel like because of that, it automatically got the reaction, probably from a lot of people who didn't even listen to it, oh, well, this is like a guy in his 60s who is just selling out to the kids for some reason. This is bad, probably. I'm going to skip it. But if you actually listen to it, like, the songs themselves are, by and large, pretty great.
Okay.
There's a couple of songs with Beach Boys on them. Shout out Al Jardine, who
Al
I'm
Jardine crops up a couple
seeing
times
on Sunday. Yeah, and the song with Nate Ruess is a just legitimately perfect pop song. Even the one with Capital Cities, like, if you can handle a bit of a pseudo EDM kind of synth bounce happening, if you have a decent enough threshold for that, it's a good time. And even the song One Kind of Love has become kind of a late era fan favorite for people who are open-minded enough for it. Sort of in the same way as like some songs off of That's Why God Made the Radio.
Yeah.
From that last Beach Boys record, which was which was way better than it had any right to be. So yeah, I'd say, we're looking back at the man's legacy, looking back at his catalog. If you want to listen to a record of his that's not quite as overexposed as a Pet Sounds, or isn't completely destroyed by its production, like his debut solo album, then isn't totally landyified, then yeah, definitely give No Peer Pressure a shot, and a cute little pun there with the title as well, because the Beach Boys, as far as his involvement, were over, and so now it's No Peer Pressure. Baby, Pier.
Yeah. When it has like an album cover that's like him under a Pier. It's really that I dig that. That's cool. I'll have to give that a spin and see how I vibe with it. But good picks. Good picks for discussion points. That was one of the things we didn't talk about prior to was what our picks were necessarily going to be there. But yeah, 2015 Mad Sounds. That was a long time ago.
Year.
These records were a long time ago. That's about all I had in the bag. Do you have any closing thoughts, any remarks, anything you want to plug that you're doing in the future, in the near future, in the conceptual future?
Well, in the meantime, I am, my main platform is a lot shorter form these days. I just take my phone, put it on front-facing camera, have a green screen of a news story behind me, and talk about it for a minute on TikTok, and hope that people enjoy that. Or I talk about, in a lot of cases this year, new Bruce Springsteen things that come out, I guess. And hopefully this this reunion event went over better than the Blur one.
I mean, the Magic Whip, very much so. We passed that benchmark 30 minutes ago, 45 minutes ago, an hour and a half ago.
Hopefully this is more of a bout of Darren situation. You know?
I would say my wholly unbiased, even though it's something I'm absolutely involved with, opinion. It is. One thing I did want to ask you was because you did do one other podcast for a little bit after Mad Sounds kind of fizzled out. Was there any reason why you sort of like strayed away from doing longer form, even if it was just mic to mic content, in lieu of doing like shorter form, faster stuff? Was it just because production, or?
It was not. It was truly not a conscious thing at all. I think the thing was, like, I did Mad Sounds in conjunction with college.
Yeah.
And I think just like as responsibilities for that very lucrative journalism degree came in, it just kind of fell more by the wayside as it became more arduous to put together logistically and put the whole behemoth of audio into Audacity and go through it and cut out the gaps, and like it just became a lot. And so I kind of focused my efforts more toward the fully involved music.
Okay.
Which I put out a couple of records in the time since, in case anyone here doesn't know.
Yeah, go listen to them.
I've got a record. I've got another record in my head right now. It's just a matter of having the budget to actually put it adequately to a record. But yeah, and then so I kind of just stopped with that altogether. And then once lockdowns happened, I was like, let me give this fucking TikTok thing a try. And then just as people talking on there became more of a thing, and it wasn't quite as much the kind of redo of Vine. Like, it became more of like an actual kind of discourse vehicle. And I also did like, some shit posts and mashups and all that kind of stuff. It just naturally became the vehicle for putting music dork thoughts out there that just made the most sense. It's also one that's kind of impossible to overthink. It's kind of hard to get burnt out on it, especially if you're not on like a strict schedule. And so as a result, like, it's kind of impossible to permanently put down, because I can just be like, oh, I have a thought on this record or this news story or this long lost Fleetwood Mac album that's or Buckingham Nicks record that's getting a pressing after 50 years, or I have a take on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominees, I guess. Let me just, put the phone up, yap for 2 minutes, edit it over another couple of minutes, put it out there, and that's that. And so, yeah, it just, over the last five or so years, has become just what makes the most sense to me. I've tried reposting them onto Reels. It does not get the same audience unless I'm dunking on a burger. That's a whole other thing. But yeah, so that is hopefully this, and hopefully that was another reason why I was feeling kind of existential toward the end of last year, by the way, is that threat was looming. And now it seems to, knock on wood, seem to not be a concern anymore. But yeah, for the foreseeable future, that is just the platform that makes the most sense to me.
And you can follow him there on Fully Involved Mark. He does, I mean, I've been watching, obviously, we've been friends for longer than TikTok's been around. And it's been interesting to see, like, what you end up caught up in, so to speak. Like, what sounds you make or mashups you make that do catch attention and traction. It's an interesting observance of, like, algorithm in effect. And I think that I'm happy to see that you, like, have found these pockets of success on there and have, like, had your own avenues, your own, like, niche places that it's taken you. And I wish, I mean, obviously, I wish you nothing but the best. I wish that it continues to be a great endeavor for you. I don't make TikToks much anymore. I talked to you recently about making some more. It's just a platform that I've very much, I don't know. It's such in flux that I've never really creatively been able to commit any time to it mentally.
You feel the draw to the long form. I get it. In a way, content's kind of like become this totally, like, either you're making stuff that's 1 minute or 5 hours.
Yeah.
No middle ground.
And like, as much as I try to fight within myself to meeting a middle ground, even currently, I'm recording a season of basketball where I wanted each episode to be like 30-ish minutes. Each episode is an hour at least because the games end up being so long. So, like, it's a battle, but it's an interesting one to go on. But I wanted to thank you again, Mark, for joining me for this reunion. I also hope that you listening took away a lot from it, or got a good peer into a evolution of time, and you remember that 2015 was a long time ago, and Mad Sounds was a thing.
Yeah, I have changed the user. I'm pretty sure the usernames have changed on all platforms.
Yeah,
but
they're on Fully Involved.
Who the hell knows? I think, like, the channel itself where that podcast was is still called Mad Sounds, and actually, little peek behind the sound here. So this episode will not go onto podcast feeds because I went to the website where I hosted the podcast on, and it doesn't exist anymore.
We're getting old.
RIP Shout Engine. I can't do anything to manage things on Apple Podcasts whatsoever, and so it's just gonna kind of sit there until we all rot.
That's the beauty of the internet. It doesn't rot. It just sits there dormant forever.
Amen.